Shalom, shalom, everybody. Ariel Bar Tzadok here from the KosherTorah School, found online at www.KosherTorah.com. We are here in the middle of a series of lessons, which I have entitled Kabbalah 101 Plus. We talk about those things that your other rabbis don't talk about. And not because they're weird or different or unauthoritative, but rather because most of my peers just unfortunately don't really bother to extend their knowledge into experience, to recognize many of these secret teachings from the inside. Now, this is lesson 5 in our series, and tonight we're going to talk about the many different species of angels and other non-human entities who might be popping in and out of your life right now without you even knowing it. Don't get spooked, please. Are there really entities out there in your life right now who are involved with you? You probably don't even know it. Yeah, that's probably very true, but that's beside the point. We do live in a very crowded universe. And like I said, this is lesson 5 in this series. Now, put things in a context. In our previous lesson 4, we discussed Ma'aseh Merkavah, which of course had its origins in the experience or the vision, revealed vision, of the prophet Ezekiel recorded in the Bible. And again, in all due respect to my dear friend Eric von Daniken, sorry Eric, and to all these people who think that what Ezekiel saw was a spaceship. No, it wasn't. It wasn't something that was traveling in space. At least not space as we know and understand it. One of the wonderful things about the discoveries of modern science is that it confirms that which the ancients have known since when? Who knows? They know that if you look at the entire structure of our universe, that only about 3-4% of it is what we know and see, the matter that we know and understand. And around us, surrounding us, 10 times bigger, 5 times bigger, whatever, is something called dark matter. And they still don't know what it is. That's why they call it dark, meaning unknown, a different type. And around that, there's something called dark energy. So out of all the universe, everything that we know, everything that we've seen, I'm talking about scientifically now, is limited to that very small percentage that we know of within the context of, in quote, matter that we know and understand. So there's a whole bunch out there that we don't, as yet, from the point of view of secular science, know and understand. And just for the record, so we don't sound ignorant, what real scientific discoveries are probably about, to be modest, and I think I'm being honest and accurate, are probably about 200 years ahead of what we think science and technology is today. To spill the beans, and of course no one will verify this, no one's going to tell you anything, we have very advanced space travel. We've been out there all over the place. We've gone interdimensionally. We know a whole bunch of different stuff. And of course, it's all classified top secret, above top secret. But they know it. And they're messing around. And you know what it's like when you mess around? You want to know what's going to trigger the Messianic Wars and bring Mashiach, huh? Somehow, somewhere, somebody out there is going to be messing around with the wrong entities. We're going to come and say, I think it's time to make order on Earth. So I think that they might be a little bit sooner in coming than later, but whatever. With that being said, in our previous lesson, we talked about the angels of the Merkavah. In this week's Torah portion, dating us to the 18th of October, this week's Torah portion is Vayera, in which Abraham encounters 3 men standing about him. And a point that is made very clear in the commentaries is that this experience with the, in quote, men was a vision that did not physically happen. So therefore, when it says he was in the heat of the day, in the door of his tent, this is code language for a meditative technique. It's amazing how people have no clue that we are teaching classes and still call in the middle of them. Amazing how disconnected some people are. So, yeah, I'll have to call back somebody and give them a knock in the head. All right? So, with that being said, don't think it's a bad thing to knock somebody in the head, either proverbially or sometimes even physically. Yeah, sometimes you got to have that. But whatever. And especially when we talk about malachim. First of all, for those of you who follow me on Facebook, you know I posted a little silly thing a couple hours before class to remind my Facebook audience of the class. And I took one of the most, I don't know, new age weirdo pictures of like this teenage blonde woman in a long white dress with wings sitting on a cloud somewhere. And this is their image and picture of an angel. Maybe it's somebody's picture of an angel. I was just talking to the Rabbanit earlier before class began, and I was sharing with her that we may have the possibility of actually showing you tonight on camera a real angel. Don't know if we're going to be able to do that, but we might try, right? We might try. It's a very special angel. I can't reveal the angel's name at this time, but if the angel will come and appear on camera for us, then I will reveal the angel's name at that time. So stay tuned. Let's see if we can bring this angel into manifestation. If you don't know that I love to kid around by now, I'm not kidding about that. We'll see if we can bring the angel on. Calling all angels, calling all angels. How many of you remember that old tune from the 50s? All right? Calling all angels. Yeah, okay. Dating myself here. But getting back to serious talk now. The major problem that we have with understanding, in quote, angels is what fantasies and mythologies that we have caked over our minds like mud, like dirt, which fills our head with garbage. I've noticed in the last decade or so, there have been a number of television programs which are portraying angels. I saw one, which is one of the most ridiculous ideas that I've ever seen. I think this must be from Fox TV, because they're the only people who do things like this. I think the show was called Lucifer. And supposedly the theme of the TV show was the devil got bored in hell, so he quit, and then he moved to Los Angeles so he can open up a nightclub. This is what people watch on television today. They have nothing else better to make shows about. And then there was this other one. I tried watching this. It was called Supernatural. From what I understand, it ran for like dozen seasons. And they had all the angels in there. Metatron was in there. Sandalphon was in there. God was in there. It boggles the mind to show the levels of foolish fantasy that we have literally put into the brains. So somebody's saying here in Texas that they love all these shows. I've never watched them, so I don't know what's there to love. In all due respect, dating myself, I still watch my reruns of the Beverly Hillbillies, the Addams Family, and all the other shows that I love from the 60s. I still watch now that I am in my 60s. So, to you and all your new stuff. Real angels. Okay, you know that the Hebrew word for angel is malach. Okay, it means a messenger. Okay, what does a messenger do? Carries a message, right? It's a messenger boy. It's the mailman. It's the UPS guy. So think of a malach, an angel, as the heavenly mailman, whose job it is to go from point A to point B to do a job. So when we look at the experience of Abraham in Genesis 18, and it says these three guys are hanging around. And it is revealed, if you look at the commentaries, they say this is the three angels are defined in later literature, of course, as being Michael, Gabriel, and Raphael. So, wait a second. They're described as men. I thought they were cherubim. Aren't the cherubim these really wild-looking, crazy guys, half animal, half human, and all these big stuff like we described in Ezekiel's vision? What did Michael and Gabriel do with their wings? What did they do with their lion claws? Did they hide it under their robes? Come on. We have to stop with this fantasy ideas. Like I discussed in our previous class, the Merkava was a psychic, telepathic, astral experience of Ezekiel, the prophet. And what he saw were just the construct forms that his own mind made up to give a structure and form to that energy, which was coming from a higher source. Think of it as the imagery in his mind being a glass. Oh, no. Better. Think of it as being almost like a balloon, flexible in shape. And you would fill it with liquid. Now, if I fill a cup, well, the cup has its rigid shape with or without liquid in it. But if I have a fluid shape, I can take any shape I want, then the water goes in, it's going to take the shape that I form it to take. That is how these, in quote, messengers communicate with us. Because remember this, who is communicating with whom? They are communicating with us. They are coming to you, to me. So, if I am going to come to you to give you a message, okay? What language do you think I am going to speak? Swahili? I don't think so. Japanese? Konnichiwa? I don't think so. Spanish? I wish I could, but it wouldn't get through that well. Hebrew? If you understand the language, I can speak it to you. Even Aramaic. Martian? Klingon? What language would you recommend that I speak? I'm going to give you the answer. I'm going to speak the language that I speak. I'm going to speak in my tongue, and I'm going to use the words just like I'm doing right now. Technically, our little discussion here is my message to you, and I am communicating this message to you in my language. Now, if you are not understanding English, but you do speak Japanese or Swahili or Martian or Klingon, but not English, then you will see me making emotional statements. You will see my lips moving. But maybe you will not understand the words that I am saying. And then you might want to speculate or hypothesize as to what those sounds coming out of my mouth really mean. Now, this is where people run in wild with their imaginations. I've given the example a number of times that the Japanese, when they attacked Pearl Harbor, December 7th, 1941, a day that will live in infamy, their code for attack was the Japanese word for tiger, and the word for attack was tiger, 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 which in Japanese was Torah, Torah, Torah. And there was actually a very World War II movie that came out years and years ago called Torah, Torah, Torah. Now, Just because you and I understand the sounds of putting the T sound with an O vowel and an R sound with an A vowel, Torah, right? Doesn't mean that we're talking about, oh, that's Judaism. Moshe Rabbeinu, the Japanese were Jewish. They were coming to Pearl Harbor to try to teach Torah and mitzvahs to everybody and make them all do tshuva. What? This is what happens when the imagination runs wild based on a faulty premise. And when it comes to the experience of the higher dimensions, we often, almost always, channel things into the wrong vessel, just like my description. That vessel puts a film around the real deal and covers it completely, like a husk and like a shell. And in Kabbalah speak, they call those klipot, or the klipa, evil. Why is it evil? Because it's just mistake. It's wrong. Many, many years ago, there was a visiting Indian dignitary at the United Nations in the days when I, much to my sins and repentance, lived in New York. And this was a high-ranking, some type of lama. I don't remember from what Hindu order. I think it was a Shankaracharya of some type. And I was in full rabbinic regalia. And after his lecture at the United Nations, I had some questions. He saw that I was a rabbi, and we started chatting. And he said, look, I'm here for the week. I'm free in the mornings. I would love to continue our chat. So for that week, I drove every day to where he was staying, and we chatted for hours. And it's a shame that I don't remember this dignitary's name. But he taught me Hinduism. And the first lesson that he taught me, he said, didn't you know Hinduism is monotheism? What? How could you say that? You have 1,000 gods. Everybody's praying to everybody else. What are you talking about? You're monotheistic. He says, oh, it's true. He says, all of those other gods, those are all of the mistakes of the intellect of the peoples who do not know and understand the singularity and the unity. And I shut my mouth and I listened. And that's when I learned about what they call the Atman. And they do have a concept of singularity or unity within God. Hey, when Malachi chapter 1, verse 11 said, from the rising of the sun to the going down thereof, great is God's name amongst the nations. And the commentators say, even when an idolater is performing an idolatrous sacrifice on an altar, if in their heart of hearts they're focusing on the true creator, God accepts that. I said, gee, there it is. Amazing. Now, when we're going to talk about angels, what the heck are they? Now, we can go into the Bible, and again, we can talk about the cherubim and the seraphim, but always again and again, like with Abraham, they're described as men. And we describe these men, like we said, it's Michael and Gabriel. All right, good old Mike and Gabe. Well, they're supposedly cherubs, so what are they doing? I saw somebody in text made a reference to a common popular belief called shape-shifting. This is a concept and idea made popular in science fiction horror movies, supposedly coming out of the magical tradition, where the evil warlock, sorcerer, or witch, let's not be sexist here, male and female, can take their form, and by the power of magic, they turn themselves into a wolf, into a bat, into a this and a that, and they come to suck your blood. Like I said, we really got to dispel the fairy tales and the fancy, okay? Is there such a thing as astral travel, in which the astral form of an individual can materialize in those shapes? Oh, absolutely. Even Eliyahu Navi did that. But that's where we must draw our line of demarcation. What is... All right, hold on. Let me just take a step back. Both Maimonides in his law code and the Zohar both elaborate and state that there are 10 different types of angels. And of course, we give them names Seraphim and Hayot and Cherubim and this one and that one. And, and if you were to ask anybody throughout all the centuries, hey, what does a cherub really look like? What does a seraph really look like? And if the individual is a proper scholar, they will be able to do the research, go into the text literature, and state to you, well, the definition of a seraph, or let me not say definition, the identification or appearance of a seraph is like this or like that, because so-and-so says like this, and the second opinion says that, and the third opinion says the third thing. So, when you read about the seraphim in Isaiah, they got 6 wings. When you hear the cherubim described in Isaiah, they're described, the cherubim in Ezekiel, they're described as kind of really weird, right? Are any of these forms their actual, in quote, physical structure? If these entities exist in our, what we call Asiatic or physical universe, they might not be existing within the limitation of that 3 or 4% of matter as we understand it. Maybe they're in that 10 or 20% of dark matter as we understand it, or in that higher grade of dark energy. Maybe their forms are of that origin. Somebody in here is writing a comment saying, no physicality. What the heck does that mean? Right now, you and I are communicating through internet technology, in which waves are going from my technological device into yours. I don't care if you're listening live or recorded. That's the way it works. Do you see any of those waves? Do you see the radio wave? Do you see the light wave? I don't see any waves. I don't believe in them. They're not real. No. Seeing is believing. I don't see any TV waves. I don't see any radio waves. I don't see nothing. Blah, blah, blah. Don't talk to me. It doesn't exist. I don't see it. That's rather foolish, don't you think? Being that we're using it, but it's not physical. But it's real. So what is physical? Are the rays, the waves that we are actually using at this very moment, are they physical? How do we describe physicality? Someone says you can see light waves. Oh, certain spectrums of light you can see, but of course. Now, here we are. When we are talking about these messengers, they're coming from some place, that's for sure. The Torah tradition, or for that matter, other traditions of other cultures, will say they come from the heavens or some other place. If you listen to the Mormon tradition, they'll tell you God lives in physical form in the center of the Milky Way galaxy on planet Kolob. Good for them. Right? That's what they believe. Okay? So, I mean, how are the angels from planet Kolob coming here? Are they flying in their flying saucers? I don't know. Why a flying saucer? Right? Why not a different shape? Personally, I like Magen Davids. So maybe we'll have a flying Magen David next time. Who knows? Of course, I'm being facetious. In the reality of the higher energetic realities of this universe, and remember, there are other universes as well, we know we are not alone. We know that there are multiple other entities. And I'm not going to talk at this time about the other indigenous races on Earth, meaning Djinn, Shedim, and the like. Let's still talk about them. Where are they? Well, you could say they're from Zvul, or they're from Aravot. Who the heck really knows what Zvul or Aravot, which are different names of heaven, who knows what they really are? Who's been there? Who can show me the pictures on TikTok to show me, hey, I took a trip to Aravot. I went to Zabul and I saw the heavenly temple. I had lunch with Michael, who was the high priest. Here's the pictures. You see me with Michael. Yeah, okay. we don't know what the reality of these things are. Somebody says, I've been there. Maybe you have. Maybe you haven't. How do we verify these things? The answer, whether you like it or not, is rather blunt. We can't. So, when Ezekiel sees the cherub in one form, and Isaiah is seeing a seraph in another form, these are vision experiences, like the flexible forms through which the energy congeals. I'll give you a comparison that maybe will help you understand this. If Michael, the real guy, Gabriel, whichever one you choose, wants to or is sent on a mission, what does he do? How does he go from wherever he is to wherever he needs to be? Well, I guess he could take his flying saucer or his chariot like Ezekiel saw, all right? No, I don't think so. Don't think they're flying around in flying saucers with little ray guns. So let's get real. Again, dispel fantasy, please. And the reality is, what is their actual nature? So, if we're going to talk about the real Angel Michael, or the real Angel Gabriel, or, let's get a little scary, the real Angel Samakel, what do they really, really, really look like? Not how they appear to us, but what do they look like when they're not appearing to us? So, I will come on camera and I will speak to you. You say, I got my nice white shirt, my glasses and stuff, right? Now, I am presenting an image to you. Now, when we're off camera, I'm going to be putting on my pajamas, and I'm going to be hanging out in a t-shirt, and you will not see me in that real form. Of course, here in my home, my canine kids, the Rabbanit, they see me like this, but you don't. What is the real form of Michael or Gabriel when they're not on mission? What do they really look like? You could say, well, they're a cherub or they're a seraph. What do they really look like? We only know the form that they have materialized in a psychic vision experience. And for the record, when you, me, today have such experiences like the biblical prophets in the past, we too see things through the context, the subjective context of pliable forms. Forms shift and change all the time. Carl Jung understood this. And in every real meditative tradition, this is well known. This is like some of the secrets of the Sefer Yetzirah stuff, where you manipulate forms through the combinations of letters. This is how you got to understand this. Somebody's making a statement here. We see what we're comfortable with. That's absolutely true. Whenever an evangelical Christian has a, in quote, spiritual experience, most likely they're seeing a blonde-haired, blue-eyed Jesus, because that's what they expect to see. That's the construct of their forms. When the young Catholic girls in Portugal had their experience, what did they see? They didn't see the evangelical Jesus in America. They saw the Mother Mary. They saw the Virgin Mary. And they saw within the context of their Catholic context. Hindus always are going to see Krishna. Buddhists are going to see the Buddha. Right? Jews are going to see Eliyahu Hanavi or something similar. Everything is subjective within a context, because somehow, somewhere, something is coming through. The danger and problem is that we confuse the form for the essence. So when Maimonides and the Zohar are elaborating all the different types of angels, and we can go into all the books and look at all those descriptions are just the individual experiences of the individual. They are not the actual forms. So, if I want to travel, I want to go and talk to the Atlanteans in Earth. I think tomorrow I'm going to have lunch in Agartha. And then I think that tomorrow, if the Rebbitzon's okay with it, I'm going to astral travel to the Pleiades and meet with my buddies up there. Now, on the way, I want to stop off in Rigel. I'm just, names of the stars, whatever. And that's the planet of the purple octopus that breathe in the methane, that float in the methane ocean. Yeah. So I'm going to astral project there and hang out with them. Now, when I want to materialize to my octopus friends in Rigel, what form would you suggest that I take, right? Projecting my astral body, so it's all energy, mind, consciousness, and I got to congeal a body there. How about I put my organic, human, physical body there on their, methane ocean, which, mind you, is, I don't know, like 200 below zero or whatever. Death would be instantaneous. The physical body is not conducive to that environment. It's not conducive to what life is like in the Pleiades or anywhere else. When we astral project, we interact with entities who see us in their forms, and they recognize the astral, the astral content, or the astral form as astral form. They recognize that it's not properly physical. Very curious little example I'll give you of this. True or false? I'll leave that up to you to decide. The very famous psychic Ingo Swann, who has written many books, worked in very strange stuff, wrote a book called Penetrations. Very interesting book, worthwhile you reading. And he claimed that he was working for some secret government organization who had a remote view on the moon. And he went to the moon and he saw the moon men and whoever's up there doing whatever they're doing. And he was in his astral body. And as he was remote viewing, he says, oh my gosh, they can sense my presence. They're looking at me. They can see my astral form. I don't know who's up on the moon, if true or false, is anybody up there, but this description in Ingo's book is very accurate. This is why we have stories like this with regards to Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi, who before he died was taken by the Satan to the Garden of Eden. He says, I want to see what it's like over there. And he didn't want to die, so he says, I'm going to astral project, which they did. And he went into Gan Eden with the sword of Satan, as it says. And the story was, he says, I'm staying. I don't need to die. I don't need to go back to the body to disconnect. I'm disconnected. Adios. And according to the Agadah and the Gemara, everybody got a big hullabaloo, whether he could do that or not. But the essence of the story is that it could be done. And that's what we need to understand. Because just like we can do this, the other entities are equally doing this in return. So when Michael is hanging out up in Zivul, and God says to him, hey, Mike, I need you to go down to earth. I need you to talk to my buddy Abe and tell him what's going to happen. Michael says, sure. So again, Mike doesn't take his little flying saucer and fly down to earth. But what he does is equivalent, sits back, meditates, and astral projects. And he comes into this world in a form which is appropriate to manifest in this world. And that is why it says in Genesis 18, Abraham in his meditative stance, standing around, and 3 men appear to him. Now, this is a big deal because the rabbis argue back and forth about the nature of corporeality or non-corporeality. Some will say that Abraham's vision happened exclusively in vision. Some will say that, no, there really was physically these three guys standing there. Famous argument in the commentaries of the Torah. Now, what exactly is this non-corporeality? Angels are not corporeal, meaning they're not physical. Well, they sure look physical to Abraham. But, although they can materialize anytime they want. But yet, is that materialization their actual real form? Or a revelation of subjective form for the time? Indeed, that's what it is. So whether or not the angel is actually corporeal or not is irrelevant, simply because we just don't know what Michael, the real angel, looks like in his real form. Now, you can go into books like Enoch and say, well, I know what Metatron looks like. Oh, he's on fire and he's got eyes and all that. And, when you look, or let me rephrase, if you read this type of literature, you need to understand biblical literature and later rabbinic literature are all subject to the contexts of their milieu and genre. Torah was not written as modern 20th century historical prose. It is ancient Semitic symbolic literature. And if you do not understand it in that context, you will never understand the Torah. Our sages clearly understood this. How do you think that they could come to verses like it says in Deuteronomy, bind them upon your hands, wear them as frontlet between your eyes, and learn from this tefillin? Those are oral traditions dating back from Moses. When it says don't see the kid and its mother's milk, and we learn from that the laws of meat and dairy. How do we know that? Oral tradition dating back to Moses. So you see, everything has its context that doesn't necessarily fit into the modern historical, rational, logical mode of things. You would never think to interpret things of the Bible in the way that they've been interpreted, because you're out of sync, out of touch with the original modus operandi of the authors and what they thought. So it is with these, in quote, angels. They come to us in our forms. So if you're having a vision or a dream at night, and you see your dear departed Aunt Tilly, or you're seeing the president, or some other individual, don't think, well, I actually had a vision where I saw George Washington. Well, might not have been George Washington. It might have been a representation. What, again, Jung would call in psychology an archetype. Or that image was taken out of the recesses of your mind by a higher force and used to get across to you the essence of the message. I've learned this myself from experience years and years and years ago. When I first started meditating, I had dream vision, in which I knew I was talking to a malach, but I saw before me the captain of the USS Enterprise. And I said to the angel in my psychic language, telepathic stuff, why are you appearing to me in this weird form? That's not very becoming of you. And the malach turned to me and says, I didn't choose this form. Your mind did. I said, oh, really? I chose, remember, I'm a good old 60s TV watcher. So I chose that form in my mind of an authoritative individual coming from the stars. So my mind concocted, Sefer Yetzirah style, a form, and whatever it was spoke through that form. So when we come to understand angels, the real guys, we have to understand, by dispelling all the fantasies about them, they are not human. Now, it's very interesting teaching in an old book which we taught before, called Umesheleg Albin, right? And from I'll be white as snow, where in which the author doesn't translate. I translated. I wrote about this. That in the previous Shemitah, the previous cycle of civilization here on Earth, that the human beings of that time evolved and went to the stars. They had like their resurrection, and they ascended to the stars. And that group they became called angels or messengers. And they became known as the Ishim, those who come down here and interact with the younger race, which is us. Now, we are not the first indigenous race to this earth. There were many, many others before us. This is the secret of Genesis 36, where it speaks of the kings who reigned in the land of Edom prior to the being a king in Israel. Now, almost all the Kabbalists, with the great exception, of course, of Rabbi Chaim Vital and those who follow in his footsteps, knew and understood that we had numerous pre-Adamic civilizations, the author of Mishelag Albin being one of them. And in these pre-Adamics, I covered this and I wrote about this in detail in a series of essays that I entitled The Disclosure Essays, that I published in the second edition of my book, Aliens, Angels, and Demons, which is available on Amazon if you're interested. And according to our understanding of the Kitvari, now, Rabbi Chaim, he wanted to interpret all the previous worlds as being completely, in quote, spiritual. But he himself acknowledged and admitted that all of the fallen kings happened in the world of Malchut, as it did in all the other places, which means that they must have been physical. And there are great commentaries written by famous students of Chaim Vital, the famous Sha'at Ratzon, which comments on this, because the pre-Adamic civilizations is clearly referenced in the Zohar itself, in the Tikkunim, the Tikkun Lamed Vav, the Gaon of Vilna. Everybody knows this. This is not a big deal. But the pre-Adamics, according to everything that we know from the majority of Hazal, our teachers, acknowledged they were there. And they were called the kings, but they should have been called the queens. Because the secret revelation was that the pre-Adamic civilizations were matriarchal societies. And surprise, surprise, when you go into occult teachings that talk about the pre-Adamic Atlantean civilization, which in no way is contradicted in Torah, they were matriarchal too. So, somehow, somewhere, a big fall happened, but not all of them died. Oh no, you know the secrets of the Ari. You know that the head always survives. Yes, we call it the secret of the head of Esau, buried in the lap of Isaac. We've discussed some of this before, but it means that those old pre-Adamics, the best of the best, are still around. And the majority of them wanted to rebuild the world that they lost and rebuild it exactly as it was before. But their worlds were not psychically, energetically balanced. So rather than rebuild what was lost, the powers that be, we call God, brought in an outside force. Kind of like the company gets messed up, so you bring in a new manager from outside. Well, you might think that that new manager was an invader who wasn't welcome to bring in new ideas, new thoughts. Somebody's asking, were the pre-Adamics human? That's a very good question. Were they Homo sapien? Maybe not. Maybe they were Neanderthal. Maybe they were a hybrid race, kind of like physical and what we call astral. Remember, this matter, dark energy. Right now, we're limited, very finite in this little itsy-bitsy world. The pre-Adamics supposedly existed simultaneously in all these other dimensions all at once, which we would interpret as saying that man and angels and demons walked together simultaneously in a singular grand dimension. And of course, the Torah tells us that sin of the tree of knowledge, good and evil, is what limited our finite focus on things. And we lost contact with those higher dimensions. And of course, the whole purpose of Torah is tikkun, to get us reconnected back to what we called the Garden of Eden, eating the tree of life, etc. Now, the pre-Adamics were pretty upset that the powers that be were going to bring in an outside power, new management, who is going to reconstruct everything brand new in a different way. The Ari, Chaim Vital, calls this the Mahadash. We discussed this in great detail in our classes in the Otzor Chaim series. This was Adam and the Adamic souls. And the old race did not like having somebody from the outside come and say, we're going to fix things completely different from what it was before. And they objected. They resented having the new outsider come. And one of them decided, you know what? I'm going to put a monkey wrench into this. And so one of their scientists, an enchanter, a sorcerer, call it whatever you want, manipulated the circumstances and caused the events in Eden. The Bible refers to this individual as the Nachash. Nachash, interesting choice of word. Serpent. Everybody thinks like the little snake, like you see portrayed. But curious, our sages teach that this, in quote, Nachash, stood erect, walked on two legs, had arms, clearly spoke, was intelligent. Or in other words, a reptilian humanoid. Now, why would Eve and Adam be hanging around with a reptilian? And the answer is because up until that time, the reptilians were known to be the good guys. They weren't the bad guys. The later reptilians, of course, are the seraphim. We know that too. So that's why the, in quote, Nachash chose that form. Probably because he was one of that race. And he was trusted. And he messed things up for us. So we want to talk about the ancient war. Now, we're not at war with the aliens out there. But we are at war here in our own world. Not with aliens. But with an older indigenous race that really is ticked off that we've taken control. And they're trying to prove to the powers that be that we're just not worthy of it. That's why they want to wipe us out. So they can go up to God and say, hey, we told you so. And this you find echoed with the objection of the, in quote, angels with the creation of Adam. But now, these entities, if they are going to interact with us, remember they're older than us, what form do they take? Well, according to our teachings and beliefs, they live in hollow earth. And the jury is still out if the hollow earth is in this dimensional plane or a parallel dimensional plane, if you have to go through some vortex when you go through those polar openings or not. You know, you got all these supposed cave openings that go down into the dwellings. Some of those caves are well known to be right here in our Smoky Mountains. Just like Mount Shasta out in California and Hebron, Machpelah and Hebron, etc. So you get all the legends, all the stories. Is it true? Probably. But that's beside the point. So, if we were to go down to inner Earth and meet all these pre-Adamic civilizations, pre-Adamic guys, are they like us? Maybe some of them. Somebody in text here is mentioning the ant people from the Anastasia Hopi legends. Well, you know, like Mothman from Virginia and all that. Well, the Hesed Lavram, Rabbi Avraham Asulai, speaks that there are numerous races of humanoid beings who are not, you know, Homo sapiens sapient. That very well you could have half animal, half human. And that they're intelligent and they've been there and they're as indigenous to the earth as we are. But they don't have the loss of ability to exist simultaneously in all the parallel worlds. So they can astral project anytime they want. So when we speak of that race called the Shedim, in Islam they're called the Djinn. And they're known to be very ancient, pre-Adamic. And the question is, who and what are they really? Well, our sages teach us a lot about the Djinn, about the Shedim. They say in many ways they're like human beings, that they physically eat. They sexually procreate, and they many times bond with human men and women both. Yeah, they do have marriages between them. Go into the book Kav Hayashar, chapters 68 and 69. The English translation is available on Sefaria.org. And go read about a story about a guy who was married to a Shedah, a female Shed, and the problems that happened his wife and kids when they found out. So somebody's asking a question in Texas. The cave of Machpel, the entrance to the Garden of Eden in inner Earth. Yeah, but there's some kind of a vortex there. And I remember what my Rebbe Meir Levi, Alav Shalom, taught me that they tested. They know something's there. But another story for another time. So, getting back to the Djinn. Our sages, again, say, in many ways they're like us, many ways they're like angels, in that they can be invisible, they can supposedly fly around, but when we think fly around, we think that they're flying around with like wings. Really? Are they physical, that they gotta like part the air and fly like aerodynamically? No, they're traveling astrally. And they can, being that they're traveling astrally, they rise above the limitations of space-time and therefore can perceive elements of that which we call the future. So they can like rise up a little above the surface and see into the future just a wee bit, like they say about a month's time, or the energy of a single moon. So that's what these Shedim are. And a point that's made in the Zohar, which is echoed in the Quran, that you have good Djinn and bad Djinn. Surprise, surprise, just like human beings. The Zohar even says you have Jewish Shedim. That's right. Shedim, the race of Shedim, whoever, whatever they are, who are very well aware of Torah and have adopted and embraced the Torah as their truth and their path. It is well known that the Shedim honor God, very much so. Rabbi Menachem Tziyuni writes about them in his book Sefer Tziyuni, Parshat Acharei, and he speaks about the Shedim as being very faithful and loyal to their spouses. They never cheat. And he says that they very much crave to intermarry with human beings, because that gives them the merging of the two. And he says that the people who are those hybrids, they put in high places. So when I read from a 14th century text, echoed in earlier literature by like Rabbi Yehuda HaChassid in the Sefer Hasidim, about the hybrid program, and then I read in modern UFO literature and the likes of like David Jacobs' works and stuff about the hybrids amongst us. Again, Daniel Swan talked about this as well. Wise words of King Solomon come to mind. Ein kol hadash tachat hashemesh. There's nothing new under the sun. So, when it comes to Shedim, you got good guys and you got bad guys. They are not the ones, they are not what they are portrayed to be in in all of the Christian reference, that they are the fallen minions of Satan. And someone's asking, do the Nahash have souls? Well, they're seraphim. So I assume they have whatever they have. The question is, so when you talk about a soul, you're talking about an inner essence and then the outer vessel, which is the body. So do they have an inner essence and a body? I assume so. But what is the actual form of the body of the angel or the Shed? Well, personally, I couldn't tell you. Now, I can have all my visions and all my dreams, and I do. And I can share with you all my stories, that in my visions and in my dreams, all the angels I've met, all the Shedim I've met, and all the rest. And I can tell you how they appeared to me. But even if the Shed living in inner earth says, hey, Rabbi, would you come to my home, give me a bracha? I says, yeah, sure, why not? All right, fine. How do I get to the home of the Shed who's living in inner earth? Well, I'm going to astral project down there. What form am I going to take? I'm going to be in an astral body. And how am I going to perceive my surroundings? Only within the subjective context of my individual mind, which creates all the form and structures. That's why when I go and astral project, I see this. When the Tibetan Buddhist goes and astral projects, he sees that. When the Sufi astral projects, he sees the third. Everyone sees within the subjective context of their own nature. Ezekiel's chariot was such a subjective experience, as was Isaiah's experience, as was Rabbi Ishmael's experience, as recorded in the Gemara, Tractate Barachot. It says he walked into the Holy of Holies, and he saw a Katriel Ka Havayat Tzivaot. Cool. And he says, bless me. First of all, historically, Rabbi Ishmael probably never actually served in the physical temple. It was the astral temple, but that's besides the point. And he saw everything within a context. And you know something? Just for the record, let me mention here. One of the modern people who actually bounced around in the astral world a lot and wrote about it was Robert Monroe, the founder of the Monroe Institute, which became a place which was used by all the intelligence groups from pretty much around the world to learn techniques of how to get into the astral plane. And Robert Monroe was a secular guy, a Christian guy, knew nothing about Torah, Kabbalah, and anything of the kind. And his experiences, he had to construct his own vocabulary and language to help describe it. And he did. And as I've read his 3 books, and trying to break through all of his individual unique descriptions, which are, he says, I went to place 27. What the hell's place 27? Level 27. Have you been to level 19? How do I get up there? It doesn't have the number on the door. How do I know? Okay. So, he was right on. Monroe was right on. But he created, like everyone else does, his own unique language, which you need to decipher to get to the essence of it. And as I did that, I said, he touched base. He got it. Because he had the same experience that we do in our Kabbalistic system. Very similar that I've seen from the real Tibetan Buddhists who know what they're doing. They go into some of the weird dark side stuff, but that's another story for another time. And what can I say? Understand and know that whatever nonsense you put into your head from your stupid television shows about what an angel is supposed to look like, that might be the form it takes in your visions and dreams. So after watching Sexy Lucifer and Superstition, I don't know if these are the things you want in your head. Okay? If I am going to have a vision of a Djinn, a demon, or a genie, well, if she appears to me and looks like Barbara Eden, despite the Rebbitzin probably strangling me for that, it wouldn't be so bad. But in reality, we must always recognize the subjective limitations of all these forms, because every single form that we see is a construct of mind. And anyone who is going to teach you the true secrets of Kabbalah is going to instruct you in this. Because like we've learned about the Sefer Yetzirah, everything is a combination of patterns and forms. And we have to undo those patterns and forms, those klipot, to get to the essence. So that's about it for tonight. Where is our little angel? Can our angel materialize here? Should I do an invocation and see if I can materialize the angel? To all of you, are all of you like really willing to see an angel? I'm going to do like this special invocation. All right? Hieremis aspiramis, Oga boga. Oga boga. Is the angel coming?
Yeah.
Ah. There we go. This is my little angel. This is a real angel. You want to know the angel's name? Kalba de Ariel. Kalba de Ariel, that's her name. This is a real angel materialized in this form. Say hello to everybody, angel. There you go. Give them all a psychic message from the higher spirit, the higher dog race, from Alpha Centauri, who come here and they control us human beings. There you go. I hope you guys are listening to her telepathic message. No, yes, baby. This is real angel here. This is our angel. Of course, we have an archangel behind the thing over there. But if we bring her in over here, oh, it's going to be a big mess. But this is our little angel. Yeah. Okay. There you go.
She was asleep.
She was?
Yeah.
All righty. I told you I was going to try to show you an angel, and there I did. So there. That's an angel for you. And you think I'm being facetious.
Yeah, she's going to eat too.
She's going to eat?
Yes.
Okay, very nice.
Time.
Okay. So she's got Spock ears. So she's got big ears.
She's got big ears.
All right. I'm going to bring up something in the family here. Complete caveat, disconnected from our class. The Rabbanit and I have a question. Because many times we've taken little Lavana out, and people say, oh, she looks like a Siberian husky. And when we got it, it was a purebred shepherd. So, we don't know. Does she look like a mixed shepherd and husky? A Shepsky, is that what they call it? The Rabbanita showed me, videos online of this Shepsky. And gosh, it looks identical to Lavana. So, believe it or not, Amazon.com, right? The famous 666 of us all, right? All hail the new whatever, has a doggy DNA test. I should give him my DNA test. See what kind of a dog I am. He'll come back and say, you're a dirty dog. That I already know. So we're gonna take a DNA test to see if she's purebred or if she's a shepherd mix. A Shepsky? A Shepsky. So, to be continued to know if the angel is pure or not. Alrighty, guys. Look, this stuff, yes, is important, but at the same time, just take it with a grain of salt. What was that?
Diane says mix.
She does? All right, somebody thinks it's a mix. But okay, you know what? For any of you who want to discuss this, you go to Messenger and you find that Abanit and you send her all the stuff because she's on top of this. All right? See, this conversation just went right to the dogs. But just remember, dog in Hebrew is Kelev. Kelev in Gematria, Eliyahu Hanavi. And Eliyahu is Sandalphon, the angel, upon the Ark of the Covenant. So, what does that have to do with anything? I have no idea. Just letting the imagination run wild. Alrighty, guys. Remember, this is serious, but always take it with a little grain of salt. Right? We're taught, serve God with gladness. All right? Don't be so superstitious and fearful. We all interact with real malachim on a daily basis at night in sleep. Robert Monroe picked up on that. And he didn't call them angels. He called them, I don't know what the heck he called them. But anyway, it's real. So when you're having these things happen in your head and your dreams and stuff, just accept it. Don't try to look for Hollywood sound and light experience. I want a 50-foot big angel, big muscles and big sword is going to come down, rip the roof off my house and speak. Oh, I'm watching a little bit too much television. Okay, just chill out. It's all up here and in here because it's all around us. You accept this and you understand this, you've taken a big step into the greater world. So on that note, let's conclude. Thank you all for joining me. God willing, we'll pick up next week with all kinds of good fun stuff. Thank you all for listening. Shalom.